Do you find yourself sometimes really frustrated or maybe even annoyed with the people that you work with, or maybe that you manage, or maybe even the people that you live with, the ones that have your same last name? Well, if that's you, you're going to want to stick around for this video because I have two really great tools to help you to minimize that frustration and to minimize that level of annoyance that you might have with other people. I learned these two concepts from my mentor years and years ago, and it radically changed my life and changed my relationships. I have much better relationships because of these two tools. So stick around. I'm going to share them with you in just a moment. Hi, my name is Phil Chicho, and I've been working with people all over the world on these concepts about relationships, about managing people, about understanding people in order to have better relationships and communicate with people in a more effective way that sets you apart, not just in a professional way, but even in a personal way, right? In your personal relationships. So I'm going to share these two concepts with you, as I mentioned, that I learned years ago from a mentor of mine who really helped me to understand where all of my frustration was coming from. Because ultimately, I was working with lots of people, and many of those people, they frustrated me, they annoyed me, right? I had people to the left of me, people to the right of me, and for some reason, I had a lot of kind of annoyance with the way that they behaved, the way they communicated, the way that they worked. And I realized at one point, after talking to my mentor, it can't be all of them. It has to be me. There has to be something that I'm doing that's causing all of this. And I thought that people were actually annoying me, but that can't be possible, right? If you think about this, people don't annoy you. Your interpretation of what they do is annoying you, right? People don't frustrate you. Your interpretation of what they're doing frustrates you. It's not them. It's your story, or the story that you put and place on what they are doing or saying. Because ultimately, everything just is until you give it a story, right? That person just is until you give it a story. That person just is until you give him or her a story, right? The traffic just is until you give it a story. The weather just is until you give it a story. And we oftentimes give people a story based on our conditioning, sort of the software that's been downloaded on us, into us, that causes us to see people in a way that may not serve our relationship. So let me share these two tools with you because I know that you could activate them right away and could radically change, the way that you interact with other people and, of course, the relationships that you have. So the first one is this, okay? We basically take information in from the outside world using our sensory factors, right? Our ability to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Most of us know this, right? So we see things through our eyes, not with our eyes, through our eyes, okay? And we see things, we hear things through our ears too, right? So information is coming in at us. Now, when you see somebody and they say something to you, or you experience an event and you hear something or see something, you take that information in through your sensory factors, and then you begin to process it through a series of filters, right? These filters are essentially the software that's been downloaded onto your hard drive, right, in your brain, okay? And some of this software, or these filters, if you will, they serve you, and some of them sometimes don't. Some of these filters or software that's been downloaded came from other people, obviously, right? So your upbringing, your values, your ideals, your belief systems, the environment that you grew up in, right? So this is called environmental conditioning. So people around you started downloading software about these people and those people, these environments and those environments, these ideas and those ideas, their beliefs and your beliefs. And they downloaded all this information, is stored in your subconscious, if you will, okay? And these filters or this software is kind of running unconsciously, right? You don't know it's happening. Some of these also you've installed, right? Based on experiences you've had in the past or interactions you've had with people. But ultimately, there are a whole bunch of these filters that you are processing your information through, right? It could be experiences, history, ideals, values, assumptions, you name it. There's a whole bunch of them. And so this information comes in, and then you put that information through these filters, or you process this with the software that you have downloaded. And ultimately, when it comes out on the other side, it creates your internal representation of whatever that reality is. Now, that is your internal representation. And so that internal representation then makes you feel a certain way and behave a certain way. And that is how we get our reality of the world, okay? So let me explain this so you can understand how you can kind of manage this and control this, because it's an important factor in, reducing your level of annoyance or frustration with people, okay? So you've probably all experienced this one time or another where you were with somebody else and you experience an event with that person. And then later on, that person is sharing that exact event with another person or another group of people, and you're listening to their interpretation of it. And you look at them and you say, wait a second, that's not what happened. That's not what he or she said. That is not what happened. And they're looking at you and said, wait a second, we were there together. Of course it was what happened. You saw it just like I saw it. And both of you have a different interpretation of that same event, that same reality. And you can argue all day long with this person, right? Whether you're right or this person's right. And at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself a question. Who's really right and who's really wrong? Now, you might be saying, I'm right, they're wrong. But the reality is this, you're both right. That was your interpretation of that reality, and that was their interpretation of that reality. So it is your reality, right? And this is why oftentimes you might even see maybe a television program. Years ago, I watched a program with my wife, and they were talking about this idea, and they did a little skit, or they wanted to share an example of what this looks like. So let me share what it looked like, okay? I'm going to kind of paraphrase the show. It was a long time ago. They were in a park, so these actors were in a park with a bunch of people, a public park. And some of these actors were just asked to do something there in the park to see what people thought about what happened. And so they had somebody run by, right, and snatch a purse from a woman and run off. And then they asked people at the park that weren't actors, right, hey, what did you see? What happened? And everybody had a different interpretation of what happened. The way they described the person who snatched the purse, okay, was completely different, right? Was wearing a hat, wasn't wearing a hat, was tall, was short, was wearing a red shirt, was wearing a blue shirt, right? All these different interpretations. And so what people saw was different than the reality that existed, right? For everybody else's reality. And so how does that happen? It's their own internal representation of that reality. And you've probably experienced this as well. So what I want to share with you here is understanding that these filters exist, okay? And some of them, like I said, serve you. Some of these filters, you see things in a positive light, and some of these things cause you to see things in a negative light. The key is to understanding this. If you're frustrated by somebody, okay, maybe your filter of belief and values and ideals don't match theirs. Now, that isn't right or wrong, okay? It just is, right? You were brought up in a different environment with different cultural views or values or beliefs than they were. And as long as their values or cultural beliefs and their behavior isn't actually hurting anybody, okay? Is it right or is it wrong? That's irrelevant. It's just theirs. And so let me go back to my experience in the work world when I was working with a whole bunch of people, and the person next to me had a different set of values and beliefs and ideals, right, than I did. I was brought up in a certain culture, in a certain environment. You were as well. They're different environments. They're not right or wrong. They're just different. But I was taking the way that this person behaved and the way that they communicated as a violation of my beliefs, values, and ideals, right? And that frustrated me. And how dare you? And how can you? And all those questions that you say to people, right? That you ask people. And the reality was this. It wasn't right or wrong. It was just theirs. And so what's important to recognize is to identify what your filters are that might be different than others, okay? And see if you can't maybe change them, okay? Not change them entirely. I mean, I don't want you to change your belief systems, but understand them, right? Or maybe question them and say, is this belief that I have one that I should hold on to? Is this value that I have one that I should hold on to? And if it is, certainly hold on to it. But maybe it was passed on to you by somebody and maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe viewing people from that filter doesn't make sense, right? So if you can identify these filters and make sure that they serve you, and then understand that these filters are causing you a interpretation of this person or this relationship that may not be serving you, and maybe you can make some adjustments to those filters. So this is an important concept and tool to start to identify and become more aware of and start to use, okay? So that's number one. Number two, okay, this is critical. I learned this after I sort of understood these filters. Saying to myself, well, what's causing me the frustration and annoyance with these people? Well, it must be because I don't understand them. I don't understand their views. I don't understand their ways of being. I don't understand them, right? So since I don't understand them, it's causing me an immense amount of frustration. I mean, think about this. If you increase your level of understanding, you will decrease your level of frustration. It may not all go away, but think about this. So I mentioned that we have different viewpoints and ideals and values and beliefs than other people. And so maybe if we can just understand those people a little bit better, their cultural views, their ways of sorting information or dealing with things. If we can increase our level of understanding, which if you're in management and leadership, that's really an important thing to be thinking about. I need to increase my level of understanding of others so that I can decrease my level of frustration. So I began to learn a little bit about the people around me, and some of them became my best friends. Some of them became family friends and longtime friends that I still interact with and care about and love when I first was frustrated by them. Why is that? They didn't change for me. I changed my view of them. I began to understand them more. And so as my understanding increased, my level of frustration decreased. And now I was interacting with those people from a place of understanding, not a place of frustration and annoyance. That's a whole different interaction, which of course creates a whole different relationship. And ultimately, many of those people, I ended up leading those people and working closely with those people that first frustrated me, okay? And now, because I understand them and decrease my level of frustration, I can interact from that place, which is a much more optimistic and positive place to interact with another human being, right? Are you interacting with the people in your work, right? Whether they're your coworkers or you're managing people, are you interacting with them from a place of frustration and annoyance? Or are you interacting with them from a place of understanding? How about those people that have your same last name, right? Those people that annoy you as well. Are you interacting with them from a place of understanding or a place of frustration? Or how about those people that maybe you use this device to go onto social media and you get so annoyed by them? I can't believe that they posted that. Okay, why? That's so annoying to me. Do you understand them? And maybe understand why they're behaving that way or posting that thing. And if you can increase your understanding, maybe it would decrease your level of frustration and annoyance. Look, those two tools that I just shared with you have radically changed my life. Does that mean I'm not frustrated or annoyed by some people sometimes? Sure, but I quickly move to understanding. And if I can really focus on why the person might be behaving that way or might feel that way or interact that way or communicate that way, if I can understand that based on their environment and their conditioning, then I can certainly reduce much of that frustration and, of course, build on that relationship. Hope this served you. Try these two tools right away. I promise you, both professionally and personally, it will help you in your life. You'll have better, more meaningful relationships, which is the most important thing maybe in our entire lives, besides making sure that our well-being is taken care of, right? Having really great relationships can really impact our lives in a positive way. I enjoyed sharing this with you. Please go out and use this tool or both tools as soon as you can. I promise you it'll make a difference. Thank you.